He's 43 years old. In the last Parliament, his party had 63 MPs, and he wants our votes. If he gets enough of them, he could choose who's going to be our next Prime Minister. In the coming minutes, we'll find out what Nick Clegg believes. Nick Clegg, let's first of all establish what planet we're on. You're not going to sit there, are you, and claim that you could be the next Prime Minister?
I'd like to be the next Prime Minister.
But you're not going to be as a result of this election.
The election's wide open, I think. 6 million people voted for the Liberal Democrats at the last election. That's almost 1 in 4 voters. Yeah, I mean, I want to see Liberal Democrats in government.
So you believe you could become Prime Minister at the end of this election?
I want to be Prime Minister. I can't predict what's going to happen. That's up to the 45 million voters of this country. All I would say is that things are changing very, very fast. There are an increasing number of people in this country who aren't voting for the two old parties. 6 million people voted for us at the last general election, almost 1 in 4 voters. So, you know, I'm not going to be unambitious, and I'm not going to apologise for being ambitious for what I think the Liberal Democrats can do.
In the more likely event of one of the other parties winning, but perhaps winning inconclusively, you've already said that authority rests with the party which has the strongest mandate. Define mandate.
I think self-evidently, if a party has more votes and seats than any other party, but not an absolute majority, then it's got a mandate. And all I'm saying, which seems to me to be stating the bleeding obvious, that party has the first moral right.
This stuff matters to you. If it has more seats but fewer votes, does it have a mandate?
Oh, I think if there's a complete photo finish, you mean?
No, it's happened many times in Parliament. One of the things you've complained about is that you can have more votes and fewer seats, or fewer votes and more seats.
I'm not trying to predict. I'm not trying to predict what would be very unusual outcomes. What I'm saying is establishing a simple principle that in a democracy, particularly in an election where the election is wide open, it seems to me, the party which has got a clear mandate, more votes, more seats, than any others, even if they don't have an absolute majority, and notwithstanding whatever the constitutional niceties say, has got the first moral right to seek to govern on its own or reach out to other parties.
And what would be your price for supporting another party in government?
Well, I think I've been very clear about the priorities that we care about. I mean, clearer, I would argue, than the other parties. We've singled out 4 core priorities. Firstly, tax reform. Secondly, a major boost to schooling through small extra funding for smaller class sizes, more one-to-one tuition. Thirdly, splitting up the banks, forcing them to lend to viable British businesses, a new approach to the economy. And fourthly, a complete clean-up of Westminster politics after the expenses scandal.
So any party would have to accept all 4 of those?
Well, you know, for me, that's not a pick-and-choose menu. That's a template of change, which I think is the kind of change which would restore cleaner, more decent politics, better life chances to children, a better approach to our economy, and crucially, fairer taxes under our plan of allowing everybody to earn the first £10,000 tax-free.
OK, we'll come to that in a moment or two, but let's look at 1 or 2 of your other promises. For example, on immigration. You criticise the Labour Party for designing policies to please the voters. Does that mean you're not designing policies to please the voters?
We're designing policies to see the changes occur in this country, which we think would leave this country fairer, more sustainable, with life chances for all of our children and a cleaner, decent politics.
All right, on immigration, you want a points-based system.
Well, there is a points-based system. We're saying we should
which would have a regional element to it.
Well, the points-based system, to be clear, at the moment, allows immigrants under so-called the second tier, which is immigrants who come for a job, to display 2 things. Firstly, a sponsor here in Britain, and secondly, a job which is there for them to do. We are very, very simply saying you can add a 3rd requirement about where that job is.
Yes, that was what I was getting to. What are the parts of the country where you think they currently need more immigrants?
Well, some parts. I was talking to a friend of mine just yesterday who is an MP up in Inverness, and there is a very clear consensus amongst everybody there that they need people to come into that part of the country in order to work. That might not be the case in other parts of the country.
Anywhere in England need more immigrants?
Well, I think if you speak to some farmers, for instance, in parts of Lincolnshire, we know there's already a shortage of immigrant labour in fruit picking and vegetable picking. So, but look, it's not, I think, for a politician to micromanage what
Lincolnshire
would be...
and Inverness so far.
Well, no, but Jeremy...
But you have to make the judgment, see.
No. You completely misunderstand the idea. The idea is this. You have a points-based system, OK? And under the points-based system, anyone who wants to come under the second tier has to show that they have a sponsor and there's a job for them to do. The third requirement in the points that we're suggesting, under a system which won't be determined by politicians but will be determined independently of them, is to determine which parts of the country can sustain an increase of immigrant
labour. And currently you think the area around Inverness and parts of Lincolnshire could tolerate more immigrants?
No, you're asking me where do I'm reporting anecdotally people who've said to me that in those parts of the country...
But you've no particular places in mind?
Well, it's not... I think what we're talking about here is a system which people have confidence in, and we're simply saying there should be a tweak to the points-based system to add a regional and geographical... But can I... It seems to me to be...
And if a person moved to one of these areas, Inverness or Lincolnshire or wherever it happens to be, and they lose their job, what happens to them then?
Well, under the current system, they have some weeks, I think about 3 months, in order to find another job, and then they need to return home if they haven't found another job.
So you'd chuck him out as well, would you?
Well, it's exactly the same system as now. You have a work permit for a particular job and attached to a particular sponsor, and under our scheme, in a particular area. If you lose that job, you lose that sponsor, you're no longer in that area, you're no longer entitled to reside in this country.
And if they move to Inverness and they get fed up with Inverness and decide they prefer it in London or Brighton or somewhere?
Well, then the employer in the other parts of the country, let's say Brighton in your example, would need to show people, when they're employing somebody else, that their work permit permits them to work in Brighton. They would see in their work permit that they're not permitted to. You seem very sort of nonplussed by this. It's something which exists in other parts of the world, and it's not that complicated. What we're saying is you've got certain criteria, 2 at the moment, have a sponsor and have a job for the second-tier immigrants in the points-based system. We're simply saying add a third requirement, which is that you identify where you're going to work.
And you want an amnesty for illegal immigrants?
Well, on illegal immigration, I think we've got to be clear. Clearly, you need to make sure that there isn't continued illegal immigration, as has happened in quite a large scale in the past. And I think, I want to see an effective, fair system of monitoring who comes in and out of this country. That, however, doesn't deal with the legacy, which is what you're talking about, of hundreds of thousands of people who are living, and have, some of them, been living here with their families for many, many years, right, under our noses, if you like, in the shadows of the British economy. Now, you have 2 options. Jeremy, if I may just...
Give them an amnesty, you're just going to encourage more people to come, aren't you?
No, not at all. No, this is a one-off thing to deal with a problem. The problem is that we have hundreds of thousands of people who are living in the shadows of British society, many of them working for criminal gangs. Now, I have a simple... you've got to be pragmatic about this. You could say, which is what the Conservative and Labour Party say, deport them. Well, they've never explained to me, Gordon Brown or David Cameron, how you can deport people when you don't know where they live. If you don't know where they live, you can't deport them. All I'm saying is for those people who have been in this country for a very long time, who can show...
How long?
Well, 10 years is our proposal. People who've lived here for 10 years and demonstrate that they speak English, want to make a contribution to this country, haven't committed offences since they arrived here illegally, then I think it's worth seeing whether we can get them out of the hands of criminal gangs and into the hands of the taxman. I would rather have those people paying taxes in order to support our public services than actually being used as prey for criminal gangs.
As you know, there's an estimate from the Office of National Statistics that by 2030 the population in this country could be 70 million people. Well, is that tolerable?
I think 70 million is a very, very high figure.
Would it be acceptable to you?
It's not a question whether it's acceptable or not. You can't stop population growth by just saying it's acceptable or not.
You're seeking office.
Well, no, but Jeremy, no politician, to my knowledge, we're not in China. We don't suddenly decree that people can't have children.
You deter people from coming in.
Well, we would deter illegal immigration, and in an immigration system that I've described, we would make sure that people come...
Is 70 million a tolerable population for these islands?
I think 70 million is a very high number. I also know that many, many experts cast very, very serious doubt on that projection. Most population projections turn out to be wrong.
You believe on the economy now that there need to be savage cuts, but not savage cuts right now. If the Conservatives were to come in and have an emergency budget, as they say they will have this summer, would you support it if it involved cutting public spending?
I won't support, self-evidently, given what I've said about this, any budget which is driven by political dogma rather than economics. Now, the economics...
So you'd vote against such a budget, would you?
Look, we haven't had an election. We don't know who's going to be the next government, and you're asking me to say what if.
You've been already specific about taxes, for example. You have been specific about VAT.
Sure.
You say that vote Conservatives and